Díomh gach daoine agus fáilte go dtí a codh brethbh is mis a cuimhín ó Flanagan. Hello, everybody. You're very welcome to the Brehon Academy, and I'm Kevin Flanagan. And last week we had an interview with Mark O'Byrne, who is the man behind Tara Coins. Tara Coins is a website that is producing minted real money Irish coins. So in this part two, we're going to continue that conversation with Mark O'Byrne. And without further ado, without me having to blab on, let's just jump into that interview right away.
And the best of the pagan ways, which was reverence for nature, for trees, for animals, and the natural world. So that was what was very strong about the Druidic spiritual traditions that we had. But then Christ consciousness actually came in, which was about the kingdom of God is within, and having respect for all living beings, and particularly your fellow man, woman, and child. So that was an evolution in many ways. So that fifth, sixth, seventh century, all these saints are associated with particularly Saint Bridget. And Bridget, the word Bridget, I think the English word bright, Bright, comes from, because Breed was a goddess of light. And then Saint Bridget is associated with fire and
It's
with light.
it's also a title that would be given to somebody very high up. So that's why you have Bray in County Wicklow, Bre Fada in Irish on Bray, which literally means the hill or the peak. So when you have someone called Brehon or Breed, you're acknowledging that she's a high up or he's a high up person. He's a person of, or he or she is a person of high status.
Yeah, yeah. Or because they worship what was high, and as you said, the highest peaks, the highest mountains. These are all sacred places, liminal places where people could connect to the energy of God. Back then they had different forms of gods and goddesses, and it was. But it's up to me. I love that nexus of science and spirituality. It's all just one pulsating field of energy. That's what God is. That's what Einstein told us. Everything is energy. So everything is God, and God is in Mother Earth, and God is in Father Sky and Father Sun. But they told stories and parables, so they put it into the mythology of the god Lu, Lugh. I believe the English word light, Light, comes from the Celtic god of light, Lugh. I'm almost certain.
Also, people often recognize that Lu or Lug is very close to the Latin lux, which means
Yeah,
light. And there's a
yeah.
connection there to Lucifer, who that name just means the one who brings light or the light bearer.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. No, it's very interesting. And because the lux, as you said there, lux is light. And I was in an amazing chapel somewhere in Italy a few years ago, and this amazing mosaic of Jesus Christ. And it was just amazing and beautiful. It was a sort of gold mosaic, and it had that Lux. And I was getting into what is that, and that's the light. And obviously he brought the light of enlightenment. That's what enlightenment is. When you're at one with yourself, and you're at peace in yourself, and you're at peace with everybody else, and you're not greedy, and you're not in the seven deadly sins, and you're not breaking the Ten Commandments. It's basic stuff, guys. Let's just go back to basic ethics, basic principles. Light, yeah, and so Latin. I study Greek and Roman civilization, so Latin is a very young language, but yet the English etymology, they always give credit to the Latin, because the empire was basically giving credit to the previous empire. So they say that the English language came from either sometimes Greek, but mostly Latin, Norman, and
Hmm.
Saxon. And then they say the Norman, a lot of that came
Yeah.
from Latin. But Latin itself, the Roman Empire only came about around, it was a republic for a long period of time. And there was Etruscan, they were pagan peoples, all country peoples all around the city of Rome from 1000
Yeah.
BC, 500, 600 BC. So the Latin language only came around 500 BC. So Lu, Lugh, and the Old Irish is much, much older, and
Hmm.
Proto-Celtic much, much
Well,
older.
I
So
mean,
we've
I
had
often,
conversations about this, great conversation. Just to finish that
yeah.
out, and I've realized myself doing research in recent months, it's sort of the penny dropped for me on pinging. It's the light bulb moment. I realized that a lot of the Irish words, the English words, came from the Irish words, not the other way around.
Yeah, yeah,
A
yeah.
lot, a lot,
I mean,
and
you can see that
particularly the
when
really
you,
important words.
yeah, when you see places in England called Avon.
Avon Reed,
Um,
yeah,
where did Shakespeare live? Yeah, it's always like upon Avon, and that comes from the Irish word for river, Avon.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, and but then the thing is, like a lot of people today, they don't like, they have a chip on their shoulder, and rightly so, towards Britain and England and so on. But when you go far enough back to, I'm talking about the time when Boudica was around,
yeah, yeah. Celtic
pre-Roman,
Island,
it was a Celtic island.
yeah,
And those stones at Stonehenge in England, there's a belief in the folk memory that they were brought over there from Ireland, because even Merlin, who allegedly built these stone, whatever the legend is, there's some evidence to suggest that they came from the fields of Ireland, because even the people who were in England at the time, they were looking west to Ireland as the centre for their Druidic religion.
yeah,
In the
yeah, yeah,
same way that a lot of Catholics look to Rome today as the centre of the Catholic religion.
yeah,
Ireland was seen to be among the pagans back then as the centre of their religion. And it's interesting because you have these standing stone circles, which are essentially timepieces of clocks and calendars. Um, and there's a higher concentration of them the closer you get to Ireland. And the further you move away from Ireland, you'll find them in like France and Germany and so on. But they seem to be, from my research, they're not as well aligned as the ones that are on these, I was going to say, Gaelic Isles, these Celtic Isles.
yeah. They are Celtic
So it's
Isles,
just
yeah,
really interesting when you start to peel back the layers of history. And as you said earlier on, history is written by the victors, history is written by the people who have power.
yeah, yeah. It's particularly in Ireland because as you know, we had an oral tradition, and even the Brehon laws weren't written down to what the seventh or eighth century.
Exactly,
That Brehon law
exactly.
was going way back. Like it was. Some
Yeah.
people say it was. I defer to you, obviously, but some people say it was as early as maybe 800 before Christ or 1000 before Christ.
Well, we can't date it because we don't have written records of
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah. And it
But
would have gradually evolved over the years, obviously.
of course it would. And like, but the Irish, how did the old Irish talk about it? They said the laws were as old as the hills, or as old as the rocks, or have been
Mhm.
around since time immemorial, time out of
Mm.
mind. So,
I'd well
um,
believe it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it rings absolutely true.
yeah.
Just
And
what
I,
you said
you
there
know, when
about,
I look at other like tribal systems around the world, and it's not even right to call them tribal because it was more like a clan-based system, but that's splitting hairs. When I look at like the native laws of the people of America, the indigenous people of America, or the indigenous people of Africa, or Sharia law, or Hindu law, because you know I've studied law and I did a class on comparative law, so I had a chance to look into these systems. I see it as there's two primary systems of law on the planet. There's the law of the indigenous, which are the same everywhere, which is essentially to me proof that this is how human beings would organize in the absence of central authority. And then you have the other law, which is centralized control, dominance, hierarchies, and things like that. So it's very interesting when I was studying these like other legal systems to learn that, oh, it's not unique to Ireland actually, and there's nothing special about Ireland. The only difference is we wrote it down. And so we have a record of this law.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely fascinating, and it's I've no doubt it's true. It's very hard to. So you can definitively say it. The more you study it, and the more people study these different indigenous tribes, and the form of, they have sort of an innate, as you said, clan-based wisdom, whereby they know if they overconsume the resources of the forest, as an example, that they'll be in big trouble. So
Yeah.
therefore, the clan, there's a sort of, there's a tribal elder, there's a wise woman, there's a wise man, there's a chieftain. Um, but I don't know if they have to be told, but maybe they have to be reminded from time to time, that we have to, just honor these ancient laws and have respect for the land. And so, whereas the other thing became more about protecting the business model of the Vatican or of the crown. the law became very much written to benefit the landowners who took the
The
land from
lawmakers.
yeah, well, exactly, yeah, who were yeah. Anyway, but it is fascinating. What the other thing you said there, that very interesting, the Arthurian legends,
Mhm.
I think they took a lot of our, like even the Merlin thing. He's
Well,
like the archetypal druid,
Welsh
So
people would say that we took it from them.
I know
But
they, yeah,
let's not
I don't.
split hairs here. Like they're definitely legends of. Sorry to interrupt the video, folks. I do hope you're enjoying it. And if you are, use this opportunity to please tickle the like button and hit subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And if you do want to be notified for when future videos are uploaded, make sure you hit the bell notification as well. And just to use this opportunity to remind you to check out the brehonacademy.org. That's where you're going to find articles on all of the topics that we talk about on this channel. You're also going to find information about my online courses. We have 3 of them: Early Irish Culture and Society, Irish Mythology, and the Brehon Laws of Early Ireland. We also have an online store over there, so if you want to support me that way, you can buy a couple of t-shirts or postcards or bookmarks. And if you want to become a member, it's completely free to become a member of my website, and that will give you access to the members library, which has over 130 downloadable resources, and that's growing all the time. If you want to support me financially on a monthly basis, consider becoming a member of my YouTube channel. Membership starts from as little as $2 per month, and that will give you access to exclusive videos and other goodies and things like that. Now, we're also on social media as well. So we have a presence on Facebook, we have a presence on X, we also have a Telegram channel, and we have a TikTok channel as well. And my New Year's resolution is to start posting more on TikTok as well. Now, with all of that being said, sorry for the interruption, and let's jump back into the interview. They're definitely legends of, like, I was going to say I want to say Celtic, but I know that it wasn't Celtic, it was pre-Celtic. So, but we use the word Celtic to describe the languages, so it's hard to get away from that now. I don't think, okay, obviously we were influenced by Celtic people, but I don't think the people who were on these islands could rightly be called Celtic. And that's a big thing in modern academia, that people like Barry Cunliffe, who is like the biggest expert in the world, I would say, on these topics, he says something like, it's wrong to call the people of these islands Celtic people, we have to refer to them as Celtic because we've already labeled the languages Celtic language, P Celtic and Q Celtic. But anyway, regardless of all of that, there's definite clear evidence that not just with Wales and also Scotland as well, they have their legends of Finn McCool up there as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Um, and there's legends in Ireland that when Finn McCool was a giant, inexplicably, so he became a giant, that he was fighting with a giant from Scotland called Benandonner, and that's where the Giant's Causeway was built by him, and this is a legend. And also the Isle of Man was built by him. He was because he tried to throw it over to hit Benandonner from the Loch Ness,
Mhm.
and it landed in the water of the Irish Sea. So there's a lot of really interesting connections, and I think that, when you're talking to people who are from these other, let's just say, Celtic nations, that we should really be looking for similarities rather than differences.
100%, yeah, yeah. Yeah, one thing just to circle back to, because it was a Celtic, the UK even called the United Kingdom, that it was a Celtic isle, Wales, England, Scotland. As you said, Boadicea was the Celtic queen, she was around, I think, Norwich, East Anglia, So. But at the same time, I do think our language, like the elites, shall we say, or the crown forces in the empire, they basically wanted to control Ireland because they knew how valuable it was, but and they knew the wisdom and they also obviously those natural resources. So I think there was a concerted campaign to basically, obviously we know in terms of what they did to there was ethnic cleansing. There was the Queen Elizabeth had martial law on the bards, the rhymers, and the
Yeah.
harpists. It's
Hmm.
really interesting that they actually target the harpists. So the music was targeted, the language was targeted, and I think
So was our
our
habitat as well. Like this island used to be about 80% covered in ancient
yeah,
forest.
it's a temperate rainforest,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And they chopped down a lot of that
They
for
chopped
their
it down to
their
build the
boats.
boats for the
But they,
empire, you know?
yeah, exactly. So I think they did rob more than we realized, and they robbed the language. They co-opted a lot of the language as well. That's what I've realized recently. That a lot of the big important words in English actually came from the Old Irish, which is very interesting. And also the Arthurian legends. There's actually English scholars who admit and they believe that the Arthurian legends actually came from the old Irish legends, whether it be of the Fianna or there's the knights, the Red Branch Knights, and there's another one I came across recently that I hadn't heard of before, and it was the Knights of the Golden Chain. And Oswego gets something like Aeneas. Don't know, have you heard of that one?
No.
No, yeah, I'll send it on to you. I only came across it in the last few days, and I found it absolutely fascinating. Yeah, no, I won't ruin it by even trying to say it because I won't do it justice. But yeah, it doesn't matter. But it was very interesting, and basically said that this Irish High King, who's believed to be in Munster, that he basically had his knights who were the warriors of his kingdom, and he would basically confer chains on them, gold chains, and they're called the knights of the gold chain. And then what I read, and it seemed quite authoritative, and I saw someplace else as well, that English scholars had said that some of the Arthurian legends, because I was wondering where they got some of this King Arthur stuff, and it didn't ring true at me in terms of timelines and the history of our respective islands. And looking at the history in terms of timeline with how the Roman Empire came into the southeast of England and gradually tried to spread up, but they didn't get into Scotland, and then they didn't get into the mountains of Wales. If they had a lot of the and it is Celtic stroke Gaelic. Obviously, they speak Gaelic in Scotland as well. But there was waves of invasion, then with the Saxons and then with the Normans. But they had a lot of I was in Cambridge recently and I went to a museum there and they talked about the ethnic cleansing of the poor people in the bogs or the marshes there in East Anglia, all this low-lying land there. And they had their own sort of wisdom traditions and indigenous wisdom going back thousands of years. But the same thing happened to them. It was, wealthy elites are always trying to people, and it's all divide and conquer with religion and race and narratives. But the key driver is actually they want the land, the gold and silver. I know that sounds very simplistic. I am
Yeah.
simplifying to a degree, but there's a large amount of truth in that.
Yeah.
So it's
Would you
important to
agree?
realize, as you said before, it's not us versus the English. The English commoners, so to speak, the
Mhm.
normal
Yeah, more
people.
in common with them
We're all
than
common
you.
people. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're all victims of this empire, but we need to get away from that victim stuff. We need to start focusing on what we can create, so we're not victims of empire. So how do we
Mm.
get out of this cycle that we've been
Yeah.
in for hundreds and thousands of
Would you
years?
agree, like, okay, they wanted the land and they wanted the gold and silver. Would you agree that they also wanted the knowledge or they wanted to suppress the knowledge?
Yeah, I've no doubt about it. Yeah, because I mean, there was such wisdom in terms of just the power of food. The power of herbs, the power of
Yeah.
plants. Like food was medicine. And there was such wisdom in this land, and the reverence we had for trees, and the trees provided medicine as well. So I think that obviously that escalated, should we say, or intensified with the advent of the Industrial Revolution, and they had this, giant corporations and giant banks and they just want the cheap labor to create
Yeah.
produce, to sell produce, to make more profits. So that's been gradually the trend that's been happening for years that the indigenous wisdom of that we just need to live simple lives, eat very simply, organic. Like to me, one of the biggest solutions to most of the problems in the world is organic food, growing trees, growing native trees, native plants, native herbs. a good balance of some meat, some dairy, but all natural and organic and ethical and treating animals well. And just create beautiful ecosystems, where we respect nature.
Mhm.
But they don't want that because they want to control, they want to extract, they want low cost, big margin.
Yeah.
It's the whole model is just it's corrupt. It's totally corrupt. So yeah, no, there's a continuum. That's a big thing because people think history is, well, that's in the past, and now we're
Yeah.
different because we're so evolved and we've got science now. We all follow the science, and but it's like, no, we're not that evolved. In some ways, maybe we're devolving in some ways, and
Yeah.
need to remember the lessons of the past and remember the wisdom of our ancestors, because we do totally
Yeah,
disrespect them.
absolutely agree.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's bring it back up to the current day then. Could you talk us through the products that you're offering on Tara Coins study? And can people just go onto your website and buy them, or do they need to find a supplier who you provide the coins to?
Yeah, it's funny. Even when you say the word product, I get a bit triggered. I'm like, they're not products, because that to me, a product's like a corporate thing. To me, they're beautiful. Yeah, it's funny. Like I know, but it's the way I feel about them. That they're works of art, Kevin.
Yeah.
They're
And they really
sacred.
are beautiful. I have a couple of the coins here. I got one off my brother for Christmas. Coincidentally, he didn't know that we were having a chat. He didn't know that we were already talking. And he gave me one of these tarot coins, and they are beautiful. They are works of art. Um,
Yeah, thank you.
so, just for the people who are listening, could you talk us through your works of art, what you're offering on your site?
Yeah, so basically they're called the trees of life. As I said before, like I was selling gold coins, silver coins from all over the world, and Irish people saying, and Irish American people is very interesting. People come to me saying, well, why can't we buy Irish coins? So I basically thought about it, and I said, it's too much work, and there's no mint in Ireland. Like the only mint in Ireland is the central bank up in Sandyford, who mint the euros. So I sort of realized I'm going to do this. So there's an opportunity, and it's important that we have. I say, I was starting to allude to it, and I didn't finish it out. So in 1922, we got independence. We were bankrupt. Obviously, we just about won that war of independence, and we got our power back from the very, very powerful empire that we were dealing with. And we were bankrupt. So we could not afford to have gold and silver as our money or backing our money, whereas in most European countries and America they did. So and then the government put VAT on gold in the very early days. So that meant that there was no culture of buying gold in Ireland because you'll be down 20-25% with VAT straight away. So our investment, our form of saving, we're an agrarian economy, obviously. We went back to the land, to the field. So we said, F you, you can have the gold to the Brits. Their gold standard, the British Empire, they can have their gold standard. We have the beautiful land. And there's a wisdom in that.
There is
The
indeed.
land, there is, yeah, yeah. So, and I get that, but at the same time, I think we disempowered ourselves a small bit by not realizing that gold and silver are important, and they are a store of value throughout history that have protected people throughout history. So yeah, so we didn't buy it until 1999. The EU brought out a gold rec in 1999, which removed the VAT for the first time. So anyway, so we don't have any gold coins with the word era on it. The word era is very important to me because the name of our country, Oscailga, is Era, and we should use it as much as possible. And it's believed it most probably comes from the goddess Eru, which is down in Ishnock, which is a very interesting sacred place, associated with druids and with
Mhm.
high kings and the fascinating history that we have. And it's a very sacred place. When people go there, and the people who've been there will know that, you
Yeah.
know. So Era is on the coin to honor that and to honor ancestors, as is on Crown Baha, which is the tree of life, because trees are so important. They provide the oxygen we breathe,
Yeah.
and one of the biggest solutions to the various challenges that we have is planting native trees.
Yeah.
And it's horrendous to me when this whole, like the elites pretending to care about the environment and they go to these climate change summits. They're down in Brazil there recently and they chop down
They chop
thousands
down the trees,
of,
yeah. They
of
chop down
very, very
acres
old
of
trees. Like,
rainforest, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
It's hypocrisy to the highest order. And just on
absolutely.
the
That's the
topic
word I
of
was going to
trees,
use.
like our ancestors revered the trees. Like we had a tree alphabet called Ohm, okay?
Yeah,
We also had um
yeah.
uh, very severe fines, consequences for harming nature, including the trees. And we also had sacred trees called Billa. And you
Yeah,
see
yeah,
places around the country called like Ballybilly, and in Irish it's Ballynabilla,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is the place of the sacred tree. So it is important,
Good
and
one at Ishnock as well. Yeah,
this comes back to what I was saying earlier about the. It used to be the whole island was covered in native woodlands, and that was our habitat, that was our home. And I don't think people can talk about the famine or the genocide of our people, but I don't think people are aware just how much of a psychological effect and damage we that rooting up the Irish forests, which happened a couple of 100 years ago, let's face it,
hmm
relatively recent history in the scheme of things.
yeah.
I don't think we've processed these traumas of the past. So you're dead right that the best way to tackle these modern issues is to plant trees,
No, it is native trees all
native
over the
trees.
world. Yeah, all over the world. And because it's so healing, I think we're realizing now science is proving what our ancient ancestors knew, The Druids used to have sacred groves, whether it be yew trees or oak groves, but all sorts of different things. They saw all the trees as sacred, and every tree had
Mm,
its own qualities and characteristics. And
yeah,
that Ohm calendar is absolutely amazing. I mean, the wisdom in I've actually applied it with friends and family, and I look at the oak people and I go, wow, they actually do have the characteristics of oaks. And then I look at the hazel, which is the call oscailge, and the old Irish words for these trees as well. There's a real vibration, there's a
yeah,
resonance, there's a wisdom in it, and so we have to just have respect for the trees because it's very interesting how you put that even like by uprooting these trees and chopping these trees down. I think we severed in some ways we became
yeah,
unrooted and not connected to
yeah.
the land in some ways, and the land became a commercial thing that we wanted to
Exactly.
get the
So
yield from the
yeah.
scheme, that we needed to make the few bob, It's crazy, and it's
Just on that topic there about quilcha, like that's the Irish Forestry Commission, that's its name, but they're not planting any native trees. They're only planting foreign trees as a cash crop. So you see all
crazy.
these like foreign trees, and they look lonely, they look sick, but they grow fast, and then they go in and they rip them all up again.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
and it
like
looks like a
it's
desolate
barbaric.
wilderness is absolutely barbaric. Yeah, they did that recently
Yeah,
up in Glenmalure, which is a sacred valley up there in the Wicklow Mountains, the next valley over from Glendalough, and it was just horrendous,
yeah.
So,
And like all the animals that live in there, like even down to the smallest insects, to the
ecosystem.
birds who live in the branches and all of that stuff. But I've walked through those forests many times and there's no life in them. They're not
No, 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 you
attracting
don't you
life.
don't
You
hear
don't
a
hear
bird.
anything.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's dead, and plus because they're also densely packed in this. It's a mono.
Exactly.
Nature does not have mono. Nature doesn't do mono. It doesn't do
No.
one plant, one tree. So it sucks up all the nutrition out of the soil. It destroys the soil. So it's actually really bad for the
For the earth.
mycelium and
Yeah.
the bacteria of the soil. And then no birds go in there. It's dark. And I think we are waking up slowly but surely. But I'm surprised Quilta haven't changed that as of yet. Because we have wonderful environmentalists in this country who are. Really pointing out how important it is to grow trees again. So that's really a big part of my intention is having that tree of life on the coin is to really help
Hmm.
people remember in these challenging times that trees are so important. We have the power, we just have to tell the people at the top, just stop over consuming. So, and the personal responsibility as well. I mean, a lot of people talk the talk but if you're going to IKEA and buying wooden chairs and tables and all sorts of wooden furniture quite frequently, where is that coming from, So we have to, there's so much abundance above ground now. We have to start just recycling and repurposing, whether it be metals, wood, and
Hmm.
we shouldn't be throwing out stuff that's fit for purpose.
Usable.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful stuff that
Yeah.
just gets thrown out, and because people are just trying to keep up with the Joneses and buy the latest thing in IKEA or whatever it is, and same with the car stuff. Like, I mean, oh, we all need to have electric cars now, but people aren't talking about the amount of damage that mining those rare earth metals does,
Yeah. Hmm.
So my intention even with the gold and silver trees is that the gold has been recycled gold, so it's 49 pure, 24 carat, with the sacred symbols of Ireland on it. And then the silver has been, I found it hard to get recycled silver at a competitive price. So I bought the silver from a refinery, and the refinery got it from one of the Polish silver mines, and they're actually quite respected in Poland. There's no, they're not, there's good mines, shall we say, and there's bad mines, and there's some mines who are genuinely good stakeholders and who are respected by their local community because they respect the local community and they don't
Yeah.
mess up the soil and the water. But in general, mining is a fairly destructive thing, and I am worried. What's happening now, people don't realize the price of gold and silver. People are texting me and they're saying, the price of gold's going bananas, the price of silver's going bananas. And I'm saying, no, the price of gold and silver aren't doing anything.
Yeah.
They're constant. The dollar and the euro are losing value because it's
Exactly.
basic. People, this is the most important thing to understand. Economics is very simple, and there's a lot of jargon that confuses people, particularly from the PhD economists and the central bankers. Economics is supply and demand. If you increase the supply of currency and you go on keyboards and create trillions and trillions, 1 trillion has 12 zeros after it. So it's 1 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0. That's Trump is now spending that in his war budgets, 1.5 trillion a year. So they're going on keyboards and creating trillions and trillions and trillions for all these
Yeah.
crazy,
So
crazy
all of
things.
the other, like the tangible value, like gold and silver, by comparison, it looks like they're going up in value, but it's actually the dollar and the euro has been devalued to the same
Exactly.
amount by a
Exactly.
factor of X.
The fiat digital dollar is going down in value. So when you look at a chart of gold going up, you should actually invert that chart. It's like a lot of things today. You need to invert it.
Yeah.
Always invert. So
Yeah.
so it's a dollar is going down because that's what happens to the currency of empires. They debase the
Yeah.
currency. In the old days, they used to clip the side of the piece of argot, take little pieces off it.
Yeah.
Then they put a rimmed edge around the coin with that technology to stop the people taking the little clippings off it. But
Yeah.
then the emperor said, right, we're going to debase it by taking the precious metal out, put base metal in. Now we've actually taken the base metal out and they're putting plastic in, and obviously we have paper, and now they want everything digital and tap
Exactly.
because
So
people don't. It's a mindless consumption as
yeah.
well. If you're not exchanging value for value, people just they're tap tap tap. They just mindlessly
Yeah,
consume it.
exactly. So I think you read my thesis that I sent you
I did. It was
a
very
couple of
good.
months ago when we first started talking, and in that I'm making this kind of observation that back in the day it was gold and silver minted, but it might not necessarily be gold and silver. It could be anything that people accepted as valuable. So there's an example in there of whale's teeth. There's also examples of cigarettes being currency in prisons. And but the thing is, in order for us to get to it being money, a medium of exchange for something that isn't presently valuable, you had to make a leap of consciousness that, okay, I'm going to accept this from you for something that I might exchange it for, some value that I might exchange it for in the future. And so that required a leap of consciousness, a leap of faith, if you will. And that's why we call it a credit system, because credit is the Latin for belief, but also the Irish for belief, credo. Credo in nia, I believe in God. So we basically have a belief system. And what the bankers have done quite cleverly, it's kind of like a sleight of hand. They've
Mm.
got us to accept not just metals, but they've got us to accept paper in place of those metals. So
And digits.
what we can in theory do is exchange pieces of fiat paper that's only valuable because the emperor or the government have said they're valuable, and we can exchange that for something tangible like a gold or silver coin. And now what they've done is they've gone one step further by taking the paper out of the equation and only giving us the digital numbers on a screen. And all of this, you're right, tapping to pay for things. I don't like that at all because I want to be as close to my money as I possibly can. I want to feel it, I want to touch it, I want to smell it, I want to admire it.
Mm, mm, mm.
And it's very hard to do that when it's just like you're now doing it digitally. Okay, it's convenient. It's convenient not to have to take your change out and all of that. But where is it heading is my point. And if we kind of fast forward this, 50 years time, I think we will, I hope not never to see this day, but there's a strong chance that we're going to be living in a cashless society. So you're already divorcing the people from their money, their tangible money, an extra step. And if it's cashless, if everything is digital, well, then the bankers have complete control over the population.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the plan, but I think people have woken up to that plan. I think there is a pushback already, and I've been warning about the cashless society for a long time. But it's interesting. Even in Sweden, Sweden was the most advanced towards a cashless society, and the grid went down in Stockholm once or twice, and the whole economy stopped. Because if you know electricity, you can't buy anything. So their whole commerce. So they realized at the highest levels, the Ministry of Finance of Sweden said, "Hang on a second, we need an ecosystem. We don't want mono. We can't afford." Plus, the big one of the biggest new forms of warfare is EMP, electromagnetic pulse,
Hmm.
where you can put a bomb over a city and take out the entire electrical grid. So your tap tap tap, your digits will not be much use to you in that scenario. That's when your
Yeah,
cash becomes king in that scenario. But cash is becoming trash because they're devaluing the dollar and euro, and that's why gold and silver will become more important. And you're right, that's why they
yeah,
have value. Aristotle, who was a very wise man and the Greek philosopher, he was very good on money and the four characteristics of money. The first one was intrinsic value, so it has a value that comes from nature. You mentioned the seashells before and the indigenous
yeah,
tribes. They used beautiful things in nature because they knew, well, there's only a certain amount of these beautiful seashells. So let's use these as a form of exchange. And it worked very well on their islands, they didn't use sand because there was so much sand. So they knew sand is beautiful. It's not a good means of exchange or indeed a store of value. But the whale's teeth were, because it's very hard to get whale's teeth. So that was a really, so it's the same
yeah,
thing. It's actually quite hard to get gold and silver. So the intrinsic value, all value comes from nature ultimately.
yeah,
So digits and screen have no intrinsic value, nor does
yeah.
paper, really. And that's why these fiat currencies become worthless throughout history.
Exactly.
Yeah, the word fiat comes from the Latin word order. So the
Or
emperor
decree.
ordered that this is one, this is 10, this is 100, this is 1,000. And we do the same thing today. They're trying to
Yeah.
order us that this euro has value, but it has no
I
value.
would say it's fiat means valuable by decree.
Let it be. Yeah, let it be
Let it
so.
be. Exactly.
The emperor decreed exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, which was in effect an order.
So
But
so
Aristotle, one last thing, Aristotle.
yeah.
So the four, I know we're running out of time. Was four things. It was the intrinsic, and form of scarcity there. It was portable, so people could bring it with them if there was a problem, if there was a famine, if there was
Hmm.
a war, they had to flee, whatever reason, they could move with their money, and go to the next valley over, So portable, divisible. One last one. Durable, yeah, yeah. So a paper isn't durable. It has to be have something that will last. If
Yeah.
there's a big storm, it lashes rain, or fire, or it doesn't rust. And gold doesn't rust. Silver does a small
Yeah.
bit. So I mean, these are the primary characteristics, and gold and silver fulfill those characteristics, and that's why they have been what's called monetary metals
Yeah.
throughout history. And I think they will be again. You mentioned that audit before. The Americans are quietly trying to get the gold back into the US, and then I think they're going to pretend that they have all that gold there.
Yeah.
And I don't think they'll have all the gold they claim to have. But the
So
Chinese are buying a huge amount.
yeah.
The whole world is buying gold now. The central banks are. The people don't know this because the media is not reporting it. And the
Yeah,
central
well,
banks,
especially China is buying up all the like a lot of gold. But how important do you think it is to actually hold the physical gold rather than investing in the digital version of gold?
oh, it's very important. Yeah, possession is nine-tenths of the law. And if you don't hold it, you don't own it in many ways. At the same
Yes.
time, you have to be very careful. Some people, you don't want to have it in your house. It depends where you live. Some people feel very secure having it in their house, other people don't. And I generally tell people, small amounts, fair enough if you feel very secure. But generally, for slightly larger amounts, or if you don't feel secure, then you can put it into a safety
Mm.
deposit box or put it into a vault.
Yeah.
And you can do a bit of both. Is no bad way of doing it. There's more
Yeah.
liquidity. You can sell much easier. If you have it in a vault, it's much easier to sell it and to get cash if you need cash. But the taking delivery of sort of stuff that you really have for a rainy day. Or
Hmm.
there are some people who are using it sort of in exchange. I know that there's farmers will accept, delight to accept a beautiful 1 ounce silver coin. And the silver trees have been used in that way, and I think the copper trees will be as
Excellent.
well. Yeah, so gold tends to be more for saving, and then silver and copper tend to be more for means of exchange.
Exchanging, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So what do you think first time buyer of your coins or any gold and silver from a merchant, what do you think they should keep in mind?
Um, okay, keep in mind, first of all, there's a lot of fear. The media is going to try and tell them that it's a bubble, they're going to say, "Oh, look, the price has gone up. It's peaking." I've been seeing Reuters in particular, but all the mainstream media, they've been saying gold prices peak, 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 P-E-A-K. A peak is like this, it goes up, it goes down, and they put this into the headlines, and then people read it and they don't realize that's actually propaganda in the headline and in the piece. Like they'd never say stock markets have peaked, because it's always pumping the stock market. They always want people buying the stocks of the companies, but they don't want people going near gold. Honestly, it's one of the most poorly reported on topic in the world. It's almost taboo, but gold, but particularly silver is completely taboo. So and ignore the fear. There's loads of really good experts online. TaraCoins.com. I don't have the bandwidth as much as I did before. I used to do a market update for nearly 17 years, but I try to do a monthly newsletter. So if you sign up for our monthly newsletter, I do quite a bit of content on LinkedIn, on x.com, but there's loads of really good experts on YouTube. So like everything in the world, knowledge is power. You need to educate yourself to the truth of what these metals are and the power of them and how they've protected people throughout history and will protect people in the coming years. There's none to fear except fear itself. But I think a lot of people are fearful because they know there's risk in the world and they know they're not really prepared, but they're sort of getting sucked into all the divisive politics stuff rather than sort of just taking
Yeah,
ownership of their own lives, their own families. That's the key thing is how do we look after? It sounds selfish, but as I get older, I realize how important it is just to look after our own families and our own extended families and our own friends. And if everybody does that,
yeah,
then you have a very powerful community, you have a powerful county, you have a powerful province, you have a powerful country. And that's where the power comes from, the grassroots, not the top down. And they try to confuse us all the time that the power is coming from. Like Biden's going to save us all, or Obama's going to save us all, or Trump's going to save us all. And it's just not, as you said earlier
yeah.
on, it's just red and blue Punch and Judy show,
There are no
or
saviors.
yeah, exactly. Or the left-wing president's going to save us. Oh no, the right-wing president's going to save us. It's like, come on, people. We have the power.
Yeah,
We've always had the power. So we just need to waken up to that again. And when we do, everything changes very quickly. And it is
exactly.
changing. I think it is slowly but surely we're awakening to our power again, thank God.
Yeah.
Not before time.
I'd just like to touch on one more topic. You mentioned that you blogged every day from 2004 to 2020, which was during the economic collapse of 2007, 2008. And in 2007, you were awarded the Money Mate Analyst of the Year. Can you discuss how you got that award? Can you discuss like how did you what sort of things did you recognize? And do you see those same sorts of signals happening in the world today?
I do, unfortunately. Yeah, the risks today are much bigger than they were back then. Back then, I think the global debt to GDP ratio was roughly 100%. So just explain that to people so people know what debt is. There's mortgage debt, there's credit card debt, there's government debt, and then there's GDP. So GDP is basically all the economic activity of the 8 billion, 9 billion people on this planet. So all the goods and services that we buy, that contributes to the global GDP. So back then, we had a global debt crisis, and the global debt to GDP ratio was much, much lower than it is today. Today, the debt has gone astronomical. It's much worse today in 2025 than it was in 2008. Today, the global debt to GDP ratio is 300%. So there's three times more debt, roughly over 300 trillion in debt, and there's only the global GDP annually is only 100 trillion. So, it's a giant debt-based Ponzi and it's going to collapse. The only question is when. So back then, I became aware of that first. I knew we were going to have a debt crisis. I knew we were going to have a property crisis, and I was very worried about it. And I was trying to warn people, warn my own family and friends primarily, and then the wider society. And that's why I did that market update. It was also good. It was good marketing because people, it resonated with people. People were sharing it. It was the early stages of obviously, people using emails and blogs, and then those emails and blogs were being shared on Facebook, all the rest. So it was smart commercially, but my driving force was really to warn people. I was genuinely concerned, because I knew from studying financial history and economic history that we have cycles, and we have booms and we have busts, and we were in the middle of a really big boom then. Now we're in another form of boom, like stocks are at all-time record highs, property all-time record highs. The media is trying to tell everybody happy days are here again. Get on the property ladder. You can't go wrong buying property. And it's like, hang on a second. A husband and wife are working their backsides off, really good jobs. They don't have time for their kids. They're putting them into creches. It's crazy stuff. And even they can't afford a modest house in Dublin, so they're having to
Yeah,
commute from miles and miles down the
yeah,
country. So it's a very similar dynamic today than it was 2006, 7, 8. But globally, it's actually worse today
yeah.
than it was then, and the media isn't covering it properly. They've banished anybody who asks questions is cancelled, and I was cancelled, and still am, I think, cancelled in many ways, and the YouTube channel shut down. I was taken off LinkedIn for a period of time, and because these are very sensitive truths. I think they realize the whole thing is a house of cards, so they
Yeah,
can't afford to have people like me or you come out and say, this is a house of cards. The emperor has no clothes, and that's the fact.
exactly.
The emperor has no clothes. So, at the same time, I don't want to put fear into people. When I look back before, I think because I was in fear about these things, it is quite a fear-based message, but it's not really. When you realize the system is corrupt and it's liable to collapse, then you start having your own vision about, well, what am I creating? Because it creates massive opportunity. The Chinese talk about opportunity and crisis. And in crisis, there is huge opportunity. And that's what the
Yeah.
elites use. The
They use the
elites use
same
this.
symbol for crisis as opportunity.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And the elites use this to their advantage. But the poor people are being told, well, if it all collapses, you're screwed. Like there is no alternative, Tina. But there's always alternatives, and there's huge opportunities. And there's huge opportunities in the gold and silver space. I welcome competition because we're the only company doing it for a period of time. And I wanted other companies to come in because we need to create an ecosystem in Ireland, and we need the precious metals was a huge thing in our culture. We mentioned that the goddesses, the gods, the saints. It was huge. We didn't, yeah, St. Finbar was a really big one. Gubnet. And on Gubnet, to finish off Gubnet, that you mentioned, there was the St. Gubnet and then the Gowans, the Mac Gowans, they were the
hmm.
Smith clan, the clan of Smiths.
Son
So
of
they
the
were
Smith.
really
Yeah,
the masters of metalcraft, and there's an interesting man, Liam McGowan, I got to know recently, and we were the importance of. So anyway, it's a huge part of our culture, and it should be again, and it shouldn't be that we're hoarding it because we're scared. We need to get to a stage where we start, buying them as beautiful gifts. They're beautiful gifts for birthdays, for Christmas, christenings, confirmation. A great thing to give to a little kid, and tell them this is real money. And in 10, 20 years' time, you'll be able to pay for whatever form of education you want, or if you want to have a skill, or you want to travel the
yeah,
world, there's a beautiful gift that will have value, Whereas if you give a kid 20 euros, they're just gonna buy some crappy sweets
exactly,
and destroy their
exactly.
teeth like.
Which is a very good launch pad for me to segue into when I was studying for my master's in Prague. We had a class called Alternative Currencies and Decentralized Banking Systems. And we had a couple of special guest lecturers come in. And one of the guest lecturers who came in was the vice president of the Czech Central Bank. And we only had two classes with him. And at the very start of the first class, he held up some Czech money and he says, "What is money and why is it valuable?"
Mm.
And then he started to explain how it's all based on belief. And the very last thing he said in the second class, he goes, "I know it's crazy, but the less people know about it, the better. The less people
Wow.
know about it, the better." So what he's suggesting is that it is a house of cards, and the less people know about it, the better, because they don't want to create a run on the banks or
Yeah.
panic.
If they know what it is, they won't trust it. They won't believe it and they won't trust it. And belief and trust is
Exactly,
very
exactly.
interesting. Like you need to have belief to have trust.
Yeah. But how, okay, so on that topic, on that, what I've just explained there, and that's probably, eye-opening for a lot of people who don't think about money and what is money and why is it valuable. The money system that we have, all countries that have a central bank are doing it the same way, which is they just print it out of thin air, they produce it somehow, and it's literally not worth the paper it's printed on.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
how might a crisis centered on the dollar as the reserve currency of the world, how might that affect all currencies such as the euro, Czech crowns, and what role could gold and silver play in such a scenario?
Well, it will affect them all because the dollar has been the reserve currency of the world for, since, well, I suppose at least from 1945 and after World War II, So they're all connected, and a lot of the central banks actually have dollar in reserves. But it's very interesting. Only in the last month, for the first time in many, many years, decades, the amount of gold, the price of gold is going up as the dollar goes down. So the amount of gold in the central bank reserves has now surpassed the amount of dollars in the reserves because the Chinese, the Indians, and not just the Asian countries, but the are all selling the dollar. They're selling their US debt because they know it has no value. It has no intrinsic value, whether it be dollars or US treasuries. The US treasuries used to be what's called the risk-free rate of return. So a US 10-year bond or 30-year bond were considered the safest investments. And they still are by these financial advisors, you know. These financial advisors are potentially going to get people in a lot of difficulty, you know. And I'm not giving any financial advice here, you know. I'm not a financial advisor. But I do think the bond market is actually waiting to happen, you know. So all these currencies are in effect backed by debt. That's what fiat currency is, you know. And they just go on the keyboard and they create trillions of it, you know. So supply is going like that. Therefore, the value is going to go like that. And this was seen classically in the Weimar Republic in Germany, where they were going around with wheelbarrows worth of Deutschmarks. And Germany was the most powerful nation in the world at the end of the 19th century, or it was right up there with America and Britain as, you know, the three powerful nations in the world. And they were destroyed by World War One. So, and they went into massive debt. But the debt in the world today, you know, is it's on a par with what was seen in Germany, and they had the reparations after World War One. Whereas today there's massive debt, not based on war reparations, but just based on, well, partly we bailed out the banks. The last crisis that increased our debt massively when we bailed out those banks, and we kicked the can down the road, as you know. But the final thing is I think the key point you're getting at is like, oh, people think, oh, well, the dollar will devalue. That doesn't matter to me because I have the euro. But all these currencies, what will happen is what's called competitive currency devaluations. No central bank can allow its currency to massively appreciate versus the other currency, because if the euro massively appreciates versus the dollar, then we will have no exports to the US. Then we lose absolute competitiveness, and then we don't have exports, and then we lose jobs, the corporations slash jobs, because they don't have they can't sell their product, you know. So they desperately want to, what they want is they'll devalue all the currencies, and that's why gold and silver are going to become so much more important in the coming months and years, you know. And like
Yeah.
when I look at the chart, I go, oh my God, even I see it's gone up a lot, and there's going to be huge volatility. There's going to be massive corrections. That's the other thing. People are going to get scared because they're going to go, oh, I could buy it now and it could fall 20, 30%. It could fall 20, 30% next week. 2 weeks, there's going to be massive volatility in everything. It's particularly the dollar is becoming more volatile as they
Yeah.
go bankrupt in the next, you know, 3, 5, 10, 20 years. And unfortunately, I'm very pro-American. The best aspect of America is their freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, free market capitalism, you know, the pursuit of happiness, their constitution, the Bill of Rights, civil rights, human rights. They're all the best things about America. But unfortunately, the empire has taken control, and the empire is just about money, full stop, you know,
Yeah.
just pure greed. It's greed on steroids. So,
So,
so the dollar, yeah.
yeah.
So all these currencies are going to lose value. Land will retain value if you're lucky enough to have a few bob. Land is great, and you can do things with land. You can grow your own food. You can put in polytunnels. You can have your own water. Well, the Ishkabaha is so important that we really start respecting the water of this land, you know. And bees, you know, bees are so important as well. We need to have more bees and pollination. And so there's so many
Mhm.
solutions now, you know. We just need to focus. So fear, that's the key thing, because it's a lot of it is fear-based consciousness, you know. But people are scared of all these things they shouldn't be scared of, and then they're not concerned about the very real risks of currency devaluation, which is one of the biggest
Yeah.
risks that's faced
Yeah.
us, you know, because the media is
So,
ignoring that and is focusing more on,
yeah.
you know, the rising sea levels or all these other things which may or may not happen. The jury's out, but it's there's a lot of fear, you know, and
Yeah.
you just need to take care
So,
of.
so do you think it's a good time now to start? And I know you can't give financial advice because you're not a financial advisor, but do you think it would be wise for people to start considering putting some of their savings into real money like gold and silver?
No, I know it will. And what people should do is cost average and just try buy a little bit every week, every month. And that way you're not buying at an intermediate high. Because it's like this, and it's been like this for years, you know, up, down, but the trend is up as the dollar and the euro go down. So yeah, they should what's called cost average, which basically means just buy little amounts, a little bit of savings, anytime a little bit of saving, buy a coin here, buy a coin there, buy it for your nieces, your nephews, your
Yeah.
children. It's a great way to pass on wealth to the next generation, you know, and don't have it all in the banks, you know, because the
Yeah.
inflation, the government is telling us inflation is, I don't know what they claim that the inflation statistic is now annually, but I think they're trying to claim it's around 3 or 4%. But I think most of us feel that inflation is probably closer to 5, 6, 7, 8%, you know.
Yeah.
You have to remember as well, it's not the price of stuff's going up, it's the value of the money in your pocket's going down by 5 to 10% per annum, you know.
Yeah.
If you
And
compound that,
I've
that you
learned
know,
from investing in cryptocurrencies that when, even if it loses a significant amount and it's in the red, I see red it's on sale, because it's like cheaper than what I bought it for. And so
yeah, yeah,
I have a dollar cost averaging approach to investing in cryptocurrencies. And I've now started to realize how important it is to move some of that money, some of that value into tangible, real money like gold and silver. Um,
yeah,
so,
yeah.
Mark, we've been talking for nearly 2 hours, an
Wow.
hour and
Jeez,
45
I
minutes.
thought it was about an hour and 10. Wow.
So let's wrap it up now. And just before we go, is there anything that you would have liked to have been asked that I didn't get a chance to ask you?
Well, I'm looking at that amazing tri-spiral behind you, the Triskel, which is one of the most sacred ancient symbols of Ireland. And I thought I had a coin in my pocket that I wanted to show you because you can speak all you want, but sometimes people need to see something, you know.
Yeah,
But can I just grab one? There's one just there.
go ahead. Yeah,
And
go ahead.
you tell them what the Triskel represents to you while I grab that. So there's no,
Okay, yeah.
yeah,
Okay, folks. So what the Triskel represents to me is it's a symbol that's unique to Ireland. And it represents to me our ancient heritage, our ancient culture, and it's a connection with our ancient people, the people who built Newgrange, who were not Celts. They were something other than Celts. They were pre-Celtic people. And that's why the symbol is very important to me. And it's also, I think, it's the sort of symbol that as soon as you see it, you know it's from Ireland, or you would assume it's from Ireland. So here he is now with the coin.
yeah. So, like, it's that Triskel is just,
Could you
it's
hold it up a bit
fascinating, you
closer
know.
to the camera?
So yeah, so that's the copper tree. So it's 49 pure copper. So it's got air, as I said. It's got the Triskel from Sheen Brew, which is the womb of the feminine spirits or the elemental beings, and it's got the harp. And you got Lu, the Celtic god of light, Eru, the goddess, and the harp, the vibration of sound, vibration of light. So a lot going on. That's the copper, and then that's the silver, which has
Could
the
you flip it over so they can see that it's the same on both sides?
same on both sides. That's the silver. So that's Arrogate Gyal, the money
Oh,
in the
there, it's in
moon,
focus
Arrogate
now. It's in
Brewer,
focus now.
and then that's there. So that's a tree of life. So science
Yeah,
is telling us, we're in our heads too much. We're fearful about things. We're keeping up with Joneses. So we need to come into our hearts. So on Cree, the sacred heart, the sacred Cree is very important, you know. Um, And yeah, the tree of life, we've talked about the importance of the tree. I mean, it's a symbol of fertility, a symbol of abundance. It's sacred geometry, as above, so below. And the Triskel, so yeah, the Triskel, I think the Triskel could be even in the Christian thing, it's the feminine, it's the masculine, and it's the child, it's the cycle of life, it's the birth. Some people say it's birth, death, rebirth, which it could be, or some people say it's earth, water, fire, or sky, earth, water. But who knows?
yeah,
I think it's just spiraling energy. Our ancestors were much more aware of energy than we are today.
yes,
So that's it. But yeah, so the tri-spiral is, yeah, it is. And it's old. What's important to realize, it's older than the oldest pyramid. Like, so Sheena
yeah,
Brew. So it's not a tomb, which they used to tell us. It's a womb, which basically the sun comes in on the winter solstice, and the energy of the sun impregnates Mother Earth. That's what our ancestors believed. And it's at the back of this chamber, which is a solar chamber, which is aligned with that. And their awareness of geometry and the cosmic order was amazing. And they believe this
yeah,
was, so it's pre the oldest pyramid. Like, so this is the wisdom that we had in this country. And and across these islands and in much of the Western world. So anyway, yeah. Apologies, I'm going on, but
no,
brilliant.
you can go
I really,
on. You
really
can go
appreciate your
on.
time, Kevin.
Um, so how can people, if they want to ask you follow-up questions, what's the best way to get in contact with you? You said you're on LinkedIn, are you also on Facebook? Maybe you have an email.
Yeah, yeah. Me email taracoins.com. The website is
Along, you,
taracoins.com.
you you kind of cut off there. What is it? Mark at taracoins.com.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's the email. The website's tirecoins.com, LinkedIn, X.com. And yeah, I'm looking for distributors. I really think there's opportunities in the space for people to create beautiful things with gold and silver, because ultimately my intention is to put these into beautiful rings and necklaces and lockets, and have them close to people's heart, and have them on the mantelpiece or in your wallet. And they're just beautiful tokens of abundance, and like attracts like. So I think by even having small amounts, some people go, oh, I don't have that much money, I can't. But at the same time, then at Christmas, they go mad and they buy all sorts of crazy stuff that they don't need, with money they don't
Yeah,
have. So why don't we buy quality, And
yeah.
so one more thing, I have a 1 gram gold as well. So that's 1 gram gold is very, very small. So that's make more affordable for people. And I was one of the first people to do a tenth of an ounce gold. Everyone does 1 ounce gold, but I realized 1 ounce gold would become unaffordable for people. So I've done the smaller ones as well. So yeah, Kevin, you're very good. Really appreciate you having me on, and yeah, look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Excellent. Well, thanks for your time, Mark. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure we will talk again very soon. And maybe you'll come back on to this show later in the year.
I will. If you'll have me, I'll gladly do that. Thanks again, Kevin. Gurv Mila
Okay.
Mahagat.
Slán go fóill.
On.
There you have it, folks. That's the end of part two of the interview. And I really hope that you enjoyed this. We could have spoke for many more hours, and I'm happy to announce that Mark has agreed to come back onto this channel at a future date. And listen, guys, if you were ever thinking about investing in gold and silver, just do it. Or copper. He also has copper, and he mentioned he has 1/10 of an ounce of gold, and he has grams of gold as well. So, if you have a little bit of money put aside, just start to buy a coin every payday or every 6 months. Put a little portion of your savings away into real money, because look, the way I don't really talk about this on the channel, but the way things are going in the world right now, and Mark is a good man to address these concerns. There's definitely a bubble happening at the moment, and it's a currency bubble, and it's likely going to pop in our lifetimes. And so that's why, apart from just having cryptocurrencies that I invest in, I'm also investing now a portion of my wealth into silver. That's all I can afford, silver. um, because it's a hedge against the collapse. So these coins will always retain their value, and that's why um, international bankers are concerned, and they have an intention to take the gold out of society. So if that's what's happening, and we can see that that's what's happening, then that's a sign for me and for all of you as well to be a bit more cautious with how you're investing and how you're spending your money, and consider putting it away into silver, gold, and copper, precious metals. Now, I hope this has been enlightening and educational and edifying for all of you. And until next time, Maharja, Slán go fóill.